Hello, Namaskaram, good afternoon everyone, and welcome back to The Great Time. As we know that human behavior is one of the most fascinating mysteries we face every day. We learn, we remember, we feel emotions. Therefore, understanding human mind is essential to understanding ourselves. But human brain is incredibly complex and many of its secrets are still uncovered. So today, we are joined with someone who has spent decades in studying exactly the same, like how our brain shapes our behavior, feelings, learnings, emotion, and everything. And this is your host for this moment, Ansh Pratap Singh, a second year journalism and mass communication student. And I'm honored and very privileged to welcome the one who is a neuroscientist, an American psychologist, a dean, a professor, and a founder, and etc. Please welcome Dr. Derick Lindquist. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Ansh. Namaste. Pleasure to be here with you.
Yes, sir. Welcome to the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Invertis University. How is you, sir?
Very good. Thank you. Been a great visit so far.
Thank you, sir. So let me brief you about our today's special guest. Firstly, so he is Dr. Derick Lindquist. He is an American psychologist, a neurologist, and currently a professor and founding dean in the Jindal School of Counseling and Psychology, Haryana, India. With 20 plus years of experience in research and 30 plus scientific papers and chapters. And his specialization is in behavioral neuroscience. Simply we say how our brain controls behavior. Let me tell you about his studies. So he has done bachelor's degree in psychology from Weber State University, USA. PhD in psychology from Yale University, United States of America, and later, before moving to India, he served as a faculty in Ohio University, USA. Let me tell you also about his career timelines. Like in 1995, he done his psychology degree, and then in 2004, PhD from Yale, 2009, professor at Ohio, and 2019 moved to India and joined JGU, that is Jindal Global University. And then 2021 become founding dean of psychology school, and then 2022 he started a research center named ECOG, Emotion and Cognition Research Center. So sir, my first question today will be to you about your experiences, like as you learn in USA, also worked there and then moved to India, joined JGU, Jindal Global University, and then started a research center that is ECOG, Emotion and Cognition Research Center. So I want to know about your experiences from moving to India, from USA and everything, like at every particular stages, what are your experiences?
Sure. Well, thank you. Again, it's a pleasure to be here. So, again, in the U.S., I was a researcher first and a teacher second, but I love doing what I did. So, as you indicated, I was a behavioral neuroscientist. My specialization was twofold. I studied the neurobiology of learning and memory, how the brain is modified when you learn and remember. And I was also very interested in what we call fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. So the negative or deleterious consequences of consuming alcohol while pregnant. My work there was all done in animals, primarily in rodents. And I loved it. But in 2018, I had a chance to go to China and teach for a summer. I did it again in 2019. And I loved the experience. I've always enjoyed traveling. So it was at that point that I started contemplating moving out of the US and seeing more of the world. So I explored far and wide. I did a bunch of interviews, but ultimately I thought India would be a good fit for me. And so I did join here in 2019. In fact, I actually came directly from Shanghai, where I had been teaching over the summer. And since I've been here, again, I initially joined as a faculty member, and then I was tasked with starting up this new school. That was a challenge, and particularly this is all COVID time, right, 2020. Yeah. So we ultimately welcomed our first batch in 2021. And fast forward 5 years, we're almost up on our 5-year anniversary. So for me, the research, the dean administrative work, the thing that always sort of drives me and what I enjoy the most is the engagement with the students. I love teaching, I really do. So when I look at the US students, Chinese students, and Indian students, are there some differences? Sure, some small differences.
Especially in India, I think.
Yeah, well, but again, I would say there's much more similarity than there are differences when you look across the board.
Like, so can you name some?
Well, I will also put in a caveat that I've only taught at JGU, so I don't want to represent all of India. We are a private school, a kind of a pricey private school, I acknowledge. So again, my students may not be representative of everyone, but it's more the engagement. So in the US, I taught at a really big university. Ohio State had 70,000 plus students. So most of my courses, I would have 200, 300 students. Here as dean, one of the things I mandated is I wanted a small class size. So none of our sections in our school are more than 40 students. The goal being to actually converse and engage and, you know, have an actual interaction with the students as part of their pedagogy. So what I would say is the differences in terms of intelligence, motivation, right? All those are the same. It's really more some of the smaller cultural issues. In terms of how to engage, how to speak with the students. Certainly over the past 6 years, I've learned a lot about India, so I'm able to incorporate more of the Indian history, you know, social media, Bollywood, et cetera, et cetera. So from that respect, I think that's me learning more about India. Although it's a big country, a long history, I mean, I still just have a little tiny bite in terms of my understanding. But it has certainly grown over time. But at the end of the day, again, I like being in front of a classroom. I like challenging students. I like teaching them. I like to try to get them to expand their mind beyond kind of what they think they know. And so again, it's at the end of the day, I'm a teacher, and that's what drives me.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. So let's move to the next. So my next question is about the great names in the world of psychology. Like, as we know, the father of psychology, William Wundt, and William James, Sigmund Freud, they are the great names. And now we have Dr. Derick Lindquist. You have done a lot also.
Well, I mean, just to be clear, I might be maybe 10 steps or 12 steps below those individuals. I would never put myself anywhere close to that realm. But yes, I mean, one of the things about psychology is it's a relatively new field.
Yes, sir.
Right? Wundt and Freud, you're talking mid to late 1800s. So it's not that long ago. In India, the first psychology program here was 1906, Calcutta University.
Yeah.
So again, we're relatively young discipline relative to many others.
So my question in that particular thing is that how do you see these great names?
Well, I mean, for me, again, based on what I do, Wundt is fine. He had a lab that was built on the idea of introspection, right? To introspect. He thought you could understand the world just by thinking about it and trying to figure out in your head. I don't buy that at all. I'm what's called an empiricist. I think that you need objective reality and you need to test and do experiments.
Obviously, sir.
James was much more along those lines. But I mean, for me, again, I study learning and memory. So Pavlov is probably the guy I relate to the most. He didn't discover classical conditioning, but he was the one who systematized it. And the terms that we use to talk about classical conditioning are the same terms that we use to this day. And so there is a long history of psychologists, and certainly I identify with a lot of them. Interestingly, in neuroscience, there's something called NeuroTree. It's an online thing where you can trace your ancestry. So like my PI is a grad student, who did they work with and who did they work with? So I actually am connected to Pavlov in 6 generations, right? Meaning 6 different people I'm linked to him. So yeah, again, I think that neuroscience today, particularly behavioral neuroscience, and just to clarify, there's a lot of neuroscience that's much more kind of medically focused, right? I want to understand this gene or this receptor or this neuron. As a psychologist and a behavioral neuroscientist, we take a more holistic attitude, right? Again, trying to understand the systems of the brain and how they control and regulate behavior, emotion, cognition, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a fascinating field. I loved doing what I did. I do miss it at times. I don't really have the time to do the research anymore as dean, but I enjoyed the experiences that I had.
So my next thing will be about myself and my classmates. Like, as I'm a mass media student, and that's very known that each and every person who is a human being is very needed to know what is human psychology. They must understand what it is, to know like how people treat you, how they will handle you. Everything is important for us. So I want some tips and tricks from you for our easiness to understand humans. As we are a mass media student, this is a need of us that we must understand people.
Sure. I do think as well that psychology is one of those disciplines that most everybody has some intrinsic interest in at one level or another. I mean, we're all human beings. This is what we study. I think for students and young people in particular, this is a really important topic. And while you didn't ask it in this way, I'm going to reframe it a little bit, that there is real concern about the mental health of this younger generation. And so when we look at the World Health Organization...
So I will ask about it after.
You want to come to that later?
Yes,
all right.
Yeah.
So for now, just focusing on the students in terms of how they... Again, it's not just understanding others, it's being able to successfully navigate and manage your responsibilities, right? So I don't know if you have any of these courses at my school. We have stress management, emotional intelligence, right? So those are what we call skill-based courses, trying to give the students some understanding in terms of how they can better regulate and manage their own life. I think one of the most important skills a student has to develop is time management. You're always busy. You got to be able to manage not just personal stuff, but your responsibilities as a student and a professional. And I think at the end of the day, again, there's a lot of psychology has to say about relationships and how we engage and so on and so forth. I mean, if you want to talk specific examples, I'm happy to. But social psychology, developmental psychology, again, all of these play a role in terms of how we think about not just ourselves, but our relationship with those around us.
So are there any concrete tricks that you can say for us?
Concrete tricks. Well, I think a lot of it is perspective. So for instance, I think a lot of us have this idea that, well, I'll say social anxiety, right? Not everybody has it, but we often think that we're much more important in an ongoing experience than we often are. I think there's a meme, what's it called? You're not the main character, I think. Is that what it's called? Anyway, the idea is that you're not the main character of every story that goes on, right? Although we have a way of thinking in that way. It's also true that when we observe our own behavior versus the behavior of others, when we do something good, we succeed, we attribute that to our own disposition, our own personality and characteristics. When we fail, we attribute it to the situation or the circumstance we find ourselves in. We do the exact opposite for other people. So if I look at your success, well, you just got lucky, or it just was the teacher liked you, or it was the situation you found yourself in. If you fail, it's because of something intrinsic about you. It's your nature, it's your disposition, your personality. We all do this. That's just the way we approach the world. When we think about ourselves as a person, we all, or the vast majority of us, overestimate our capabilities, our intelligence, our attractiveness. And that's okay. I often say that we wear rosy tinted glasses when we view the world. And we should, because at the end of the day, you got to get up in the morning and you got to face the day and the world. And we need to feel good about ourselves. We need to feel that we are confident and capable human beings. The group that does not show that, in fact, are those that suffer from major depression. They actually have a much more realistic understanding in the place in the world. But again, that's not a good thing. That's a bad thing. We want to overestimate. We want to think good of ourselves. We want to think that we're capable. And so trying to mold that and shape that and build that confidence, I think, is something that we all need to work on.
Like basically personality.
Well, personality is certainly a part of it. But personality it's not static. It certainly changes over time. But, I can look at you and say you're an extrovert or an introvert, right? But that's always circumstance dependent. And what I mean by that is you may say I'm an introvert, right? Mm-hmm. But when you are with your 3 or 4 close friends that you like to interact with, you're the extrovert of the group, right? You're the talkative one. So again, everything that we talk about in psychology is always situational or circumstance dependent. We often talk about averages is really what we're interested in. But at the end of the day, again, it's learning how to think positively about yourself. But it's what we call an inverted U. You know what that means, like this. Meaning there's a happy medium, the Goldilocks zone, right? Not too hot, not too cold, just right. You can go too far, and that's what we call narcissism, right? Where you think that you are the absolute best. You have no faults or other issues that you need to grapple with. So again, mental health, if you will, is really trying to maintain that medium level, where again, you feel competent and capable. You don't have to believe that, again, you're not able to deal with or manage the day-to-day stressors that we all have to encounter.
Yeah. So let's move to the next, though. I want to talk about some facts that are really interesting. Like if I talk about newborn babies, if I talk about the children's, they sometimes do such things that they are not trained for. Like a newborn baby knows how to grip. A child does not train how to steal, how to lie, but they did. So I want some biological understanding behind this.
Sure. We often say that we come in as amateur psychologists. We are born that way. So those reflexes are hardwired. So again, a newborn baby, if you give your hand, it'll reach out and grab it. Very strong. You can actually lift a baby up. If you tickle their feet, their toes will arch. If you put a nipple in front of them, they're going to suckle. So again, there's all these reflexes that are built in. One of the more amazing ones I find is, one, if you show a newborn, and I mean literally just 3 or 4 hours out of the womb, pictures, they will always choose faces. We are hardwired to look at other people's faces. It's what we like, it's what we respond to. But that newborn is also capable of imitation, meaning you stick out your tongue, that newborn baby can stick out their tongue. Now, again, you may say, okay, big deal, but you have to think about what that means is that newborn baby not only has to be able to see and perceive that other person's face, but they have to map it onto a representation of their own face. I see their tongue sticking out, that maps onto this thing in my mouth that I then need to be able to move and extrude from my mouth. The computations that underlie that are phenomenal. Now, as you move into year 1 and 2, there are certainly capabilities that develop. So, for instance, permanence. Permanence would be, hey, look at this object, and then I hide it, and the baby goes, oh, it's gone.
Yeah.
Right? It's only about a year or so that they begin to recognize the idea of permanence. Empathy is something we see very early on, meaning you can, for instance, there's been work done where you have these little figures, a circle, a triangle, a square, and they're trying to go up a hill. One figure will oppose the one trying to get up the hill, the other will try to help. 1-year-old, 18 months, 2 months, they respond instantly to the empathetic trying to help. They don't like the one that is hindering or objecting. So again, that seems to be kind of hardwired, which supports the idea that when it comes to stereotypes and prejudice, right, that's not something innate. That's entirely learned based on the culture in which you are raised. The other really interesting part here is theory of mind, right? Up until about 18 months, a child doesn't seem to recognize that they exist independent of the rest of the world, right? That they have their own unique mind and their own unique perspective. Why? Well, it's partly biological. This depends on a structure called the hippocampus. It doesn't become fully operational until about 18 months. But it's also going to be a developmental curve there. So you think about your own memories, right? We call this childhood memory, amnesia. What's your earliest memory? Do you know? How old were you?
I think around 12. I don't know.
No. So think back to childhood, your earliest memory. I'm sure you can remember something before 12.
Yeah. I can.
So most people go back to maybe 3, 4 years of age. Some people claim they can go far back as 2. But the idea is, well, one, I need a theory of mind because those are my own personal autobiographical memories, right? I have to have that understanding of myself. But we also need some sort of understanding of the world, right? So one of my earliest memories is walking down the stairs in my house saying a swear word.
So
right?
what age?
I was about 3.5. And I know that because we had moved, at least we were in someplace different when I was about 3.5 to 4. So I have a pretty good idea of when the time is. But in order to understand that, I have to understand language, right? What do words mean? I have to understand house. I have to understand what stairs are. I have to understand my relationship to my mom, who was present with me. So you have to have a certain understanding of the world in order to take those memories in our head and be able to actually understand them beyond just a simple vision that you can't relate to or understand any meaning behind it.
So let's move to the next.
Sure.
As we know that the time is changing very rapidly. If you talk about social media, the time span is getting very low. The youth is losing its consistency. There are low patience levels now, if we compare to the before, and aggression increasing. So what do you think? What is the psychology of today's population?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting question. So one, for the last 20 years, there's something called the Google effect.
Google effect.
And this is the idea that Gen Z, going all the way back to, again, the mid-2000s, when you would ask them questions about a certain topic, and then you ask older people as well. The older people actually go out and find the answer and they remember the answer. Younger people were using the internet to store their knowledge. So they wouldn't necessarily remember the answer, but they would remember where they can access the information. Oh, I saw it on a YouTube tutorial, or it was on Wikipedia or whatever. So they're offloading their memory, if you will, their knowledge to this information structure. We call it transactive memory. Okay? Now that's been well known, and there's been a lot of work on that and the ramifications of that. To me, the more concerning part is the emergence of AI. Because even with the Google effect, there was a certain level of mental effort that was required. You still had to think about it and remember information, and you had to critically think about what was important and what wasn't, right? With AI, all of that is now going out the window. Okay? So again, older versus younger, and you said this. So if I looked at younger people, one of the things that they struggle with is the ability to sit and just contemplate or think. They need stimulation, right? They want their earbuds and their phone and so on and so forth. So they're very, very good at the ability to, manage different things. But just quietly sit and think on a single topic is where they struggle. Interestingly, there has been something called the Flynn effect in intelligence research. So, an IQ test, right?
Yes, sir.
Mainly what that is really showing is your capability to succeed in academia, to be a good student. At the end of the day, that's really what it's showing. But when we go back to the early 1900s to the last few years, every generation you see an increase in the average intelligence. And that's probably due to better medical care, better nutrition, better information access, so on and so forth. That now has stopped. There's actually been some work that's just come out in the last year or so that is suggesting that this newest generation, Gen Z, and to some degree Gen Alpha right behind them, they're not showing the Flynn effect. They're not showing the increase. It's either stopped or in some cases it may have been reversed. Now, I want to be clear here. Does that mean that young people are not as smart as past generations?
No.
Of course not. But what it does suggest is the way they are engaging with these IQ tests has changed. And the way that we as psychologists need to conceptualize and think about intelligence and how we test intelligence, we probably need to update based on the new experiences that young people have. So again, the technology is amazing. But I'm sorry to come back and repeat my point. My concern with AI is there's no mental effort required. You type in a question and you can get an answer to virtually anything.
The things are too easy.
It's just there. And there's already been some work in, it's called fMRI, it's the brain images, that suggests that if you use AI over and over persistently, there actually is a reduction in those brain circuits that are responsible for critical thinking, for instance.
Obviously.
So, I want to be cautious. I don't want to sound like the old man that's saying, oh, that young generation, you guys are so bad, right? Of course not. But it does suggest that there are going to be challenges for this next generation. And it really is trying to ensure that we don't become wholly dependent on AI, right? We need to still understand. We need the intelligence. We need the skills. I just read an article about a radiologist who for 2 years now, they just use AI. It's better than humans are. But the AI system went down and he came in and tried to do his job and he couldn't do it. He goes, I've lost my, it's use it or lose it. I've lost the skill. I can't do it as well as I used to. So this isn't just a young generation issue. This is humankind. I mean, as AI takes over more and more, where is that going to leave us in terms of our own development, in terms of our own capabilities? It's a very metaphysical question to some degree.
Yeah. Now I have something interesting. So we all are known of love.
Huh?
Yeah, we all feel it. But I want to ask you that what is love psychologically? Like we feel love by emotions. Not we don't know that what happened in our body, inside our mind and inside our heart. So what is love psychologically?
It's attachment, it's affinity, it's feeling a closeness with another individual. I would say as a neuroscientist, we can certainly look in the body and see the brain chemistry. It's elevations of dopamine and oxytocin and others. Now, I'm not saying that the biological answer is the whole answer. I don't think that's true. But absolutely, as a neuroscientist, it plays a role.
Obviously.
Right? You are not going to feel enamored and in love if, particularly early in the relationship, your heart doesn't start, you feel that little thing in your stomach, right? All of that physiological
which we call butterflies.
Absolutely. Right? That's part of the experience. I don't think it is the full experience, of course. So what is love from the perspective of psychology? It's a close, intimate relationship. It's a sense of connectedness. There is actually, again, fMRI evidence to show that two people in love, their brain signaling can actually sync more than people that are strangers. So at the end of the day, again, it's feeling that sense of connectedness, the sense of need to some degree, the sense of wanting to essentially, be with this person in their presence. Now, at the end of the day, here's the challenge, okay? And this is a little larger. Love, just like any internal state, is not accessible to anybody but the person themselves. Whether I'm a psychologist or a neuroscientist, all I can do is observe your body. I can measure, I can observe, I can ask you to tell me. That's called self-report. But at the end of the day, any discipline, it's very, very difficult to actually gain that first-person subjective experience, right? So whether that's your consciousness, your thoughts, right, etc. Love certainly falls in that field. So how do you know you're in love? Because you know you are in love, right? I can measure and observe and do all this other things, and maybe I can get a probability. Are you in love or are you not? But at the end of the day, it is inherently subjective. It's what you think, how you feel, that ultimately determines whether you agree that I am in love or I am not. And to me, that's not a bad thing. That's the richness of life. Right? We have these wonderfully complex interior landscapes. And the fact that science cannot yet, maybe never, but certainly not yet access that is not a negative.
Like basically, there is no measure for love.
Well, I mean, yes and no, but again, it's like beauty. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Right? Now, as a scientist, I could come in and say, well, beauty is this or that or the other. You may agree with that, you may not. right? I may pair you, right? Online dating. Here's two people that are ideally matched. Are they going to fall in love? Well, who's to say, right?
Maybe.
There's so many variables that come into play. So it's the complexity of life. I mean, that's one of the reasons psychology is a really difficult discipline. And I tell my students, this is not chemistry, it's not physics, right? You don't put together two compounds and you get a reaction at the same time every way. We are inherently complex, and trying to understand that is part of what I find both beautiful and challenging about the field.
Okay, so let's move to the next. As you learned in US, worked in US, and then moved to India, opened ECOG. So I believe that you are very known for the knowing what is Indian psychology, like American psychology, Indian psychology.
Sure.
So I just want to know the differences between these Indian and Western psychology.
Sure. Well, I would say that most universities are teaching predominantly a Western view of psychology. And that's true for my own school as well. A lot of that is just practical. Much of the research, the textbooks, everything, not everything, much is coming from the West, so you utilize what you have. Certainly here in India and other places, there's been a real growth in what we would call indigenous psychology, or local psychology. So is there Indian psychology? Absolutely. I have a bunch of courses on it that are taught by my faculty members. And just as an aside, you asked me about Freud and Pavlov and James and all those. So if we look at the history of psychology up through about the 1960s, it was basically a bunch of old white guys, just like me. Right? What we've seen over the last 3, 4, 5 decades is an explosion of psychology around the world. It is now predominantly female. Worldwide, it's about 70-75% female. In my own school, it's about 85-90% female. So you have a new perspective. And again, it's now everywhere in the world. So what's important is that wherever you are, in India or wherever, you may use the Western literature as your base, as your foundation. But then the question is, okay, well, where does it fit? Where does it not fit? Where do we need to think about it more? And certainly there is cases where it does not fit. So one of the things I talk to my students a lot is they say, I want to do research, and I want to take this study that was done in the US or Canada or Europe or wherever, and I'm going to replicate it here. Well, my first question is always why, right? Just to say you want to replicate it in the, quote, Indian context is not sufficient. Why do you think the results would differ in India relative to the West? Okay. If you have a reason to think that the results would differ, then great. That's a great study. You should go ahead and do it. But the fact is, the majority seems to be pretty consistent. Again, we're all human beings. Now, are there cultural differences, societal? Of course there are. I'm not saying we are all identical, but there is a lot of similarity. And so there is a lot of psychology that applies around the world. And I think, again, as an indigenous psychologist, whether that's here or New Zealand or Argentina, again, the challenge and the goal then is to take it and make it specific to my culture, my place, my language, my domain. And that, I do think that there's a lot of real room for growth. Now, Indian psychology specifically, a lot of that goes back to Indian history. And a lot of it is more the Bhagavad I'm sorry, I just butchered it. The Bhagavad, help me out, the Bhagavad Gita? I hope you edit this part out.
Bhagavad Gita.
So it's based on spiritual texts. It's based on, again, the long history of Indian thought, where a lot of that is not specific to psychology, but certainly it understands humanity, how we approach the world, how we're influenced by the world. So all of that can ultimately be utilized from a psychological perspective. And again, I think that's true in the Middle East. So you might use a more Islamic perspective. If you go to Thailand, I've been there many times, they use a more Buddhist perspective. So again, it's viewing the world and people, right? That's ultimately the focus of psychology, but it's viewing it through your own particular cultural lens. And I think that there is a lot of utility to that. I mean, I don't think the West has a lock on psychology and what it is. Of course not. But again, just historically, that's where a lot of this came from. And so that's what is still taught around the world.
Okay. So we have come to an end to the interview. So at last, I would like to request you for some words of wisdom for our psychology students, because you are the expert of it. Some insights, something that you can give them.
Sure. Well, I mean, for the psychology students, but I would say for anyone, I mean, based on our conversations today, I think that as humans, we're often in the moment and we're kind of oblivious to what we're doing and why. And so I think one of the joys of psychology is learning about some of the motivations, the underlying reasons why we do what we do. And certainly for me, and I think for many students of psychology, sort of catching yourself in those moments, going, aha, I just learned about that in class, and here am I doing it myself. And so being able to kind of take a step back and viewing your own, again, thoughts, behaviors, actions through that lens, I think is tremendously helpful and quite honestly insightful and very interesting. I would say for psychology students and students at large, one of the things that's really important in life is perseverance. Again, to go back to the young students, one of the things I do worry about, and I've heard this discussed, is as a young person, I don't want to feel uncomfortable. And as a academic, I think that's just a terrible, terrible perspective. You absolutely cannot grow and develop as an individual if you are not made to feel uncomfortable. It is the uncomfortableness that pushes you to strive and achieve.
The pressure is very important, I think.
Absolutely. Well, it's manageable pressure. It's the idea that I want to challenge myself. I want to put myself in a situation where I have the potential to fail. And quite frankly, I have failed more times than I can count. But again, it's the ability to pick yourself up, shrug it off, and keep going. As an academic, it is hard. Research grants, papers, and publications, I mean, there's a lot of potential for failure, a lot of rejection. And at the end of the day, you got to have the confidence in yourself that you do have what it takes so you can succeed. And so again, for the psychology students and really for anyone listening to this, it's about having a manageable expectation of your own capabilities, but don't shortchange yourself, believe in yourself, reach for the stars, as they say, because at the end of the day, no one's looking out for you but yourself. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Of course, you have family and friends, but you are responsible for your own destiny, right? It's you that's going to get you to where you want to go. And I truly believe that you should reach and try for whatever you want. Aim for the stars. You may not always succeed, but I can guarantee you won't succeed if you don't try in the first place.
One day.
Yeah.
Means a lot, sir. And at the end of the interview, I would like to request you a piece of advice, your golden words for all of us, whether we are from media, technology, agriculture, management, pharma, medical, anything. Like, what are your golden words?
Boy, talking about putting me on the spot. I don't know that I have any golden words. Well, here, let me leave you with a quote. This is something I've always liked. This is from Einstein.
Yes.
So he said, education is what's left over once you've forgotten everything you've been taught. Meaning, you may not remember all the details of what you learn in a classroom, but again, the bigger ideas, the ability to develop the skills, the ability to improve your own self-image and self-worth, all of that is what you're gaining as a student. And hopefully, again, it's not that you remember every detail of every lecture, but you can take those more holistic strengths, capabilities that you've developed, and you can pay them forward, as we say. And again, I just want to go back to the idea of failure, because I saw this in the US as well. Again, young people, they get really upset with failure. Again, failure is inherent in life. If you can't manage failure, if you can't manage not succeeding every time, you're going to really struggle. And so, again, it's about being able to pick yourself up and keep going. You may not always meet every aim, but at the end of the day, you got to keep going. You got to put one foot in front of the other. Not very golden words, I know, but that's the best I got for the moment.
Thank you so much, sir. So, in the end, I would love to end with a Hindi line that एक अच्छी बातचीत का सिर्फ एक ही पैमाना है कि बात खत्म होने के बाद भी अधूरी लगती है. So what I said in Hindi is like there is only one measure of a good conversation, that even after it ends, it still feels unfinished.
Oh, fantastic.
Until we meet again.
That's
So
wonderful.
thank you so much, sir, for your time, for your precious words, for everything that you give to us. And thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir.